Hi everyone, I've got a bit of a different video today. I wanted to do a bit of a comparison of the different stamping tools that are available in the UK at the moment. There are quite a few that have come out recently and I was curious to know what the difference was, because there's quite a vast difference in price between the more recent stamping tools and the first one I bought, which is the Misti. I bought my Misti when they were first came out, really, which is probably 2 or 3 years ago now. And at the time, the lady was still assembling them at home, and I had to wait about 6 weeks to get it because she couldn't keep up with the demand. So that was kind of the original stamping platform. There were some different versions before that, but I won't get into that because it's a whole other can of worms. So that's the first tool we're going to look at today. I absolutely love this. I couldn't do without it. It cost me an absolute fortune because I had to get it from the States, and the shipping, etc. It cost me $100 to get it, and I would still say it's worth every penny, and I've had a lot of use out of it. So that's the Misti. The next one we're going to look at is the Stamper's Friend from Be Creative. As you can see, it's kind of a similar format to the Misti. Then we're going to have a look at the Press to Impress, and this is by Crafts 2. This has got a few features that I consider an improvement on the Misti and the Be Creative, so we'll run through the features of that. But I'm quite excited about that one, I have to say. And then we've got the Tonic stamp platform. If you're in the States, you can get this one in the States. The other two, I believe, are only available in the UK. Obviously, you could order them from the UK, but probably with the shipping, they'd work out a similar price to buying the Misti in the States, I should imagine. I'll tell you the prices of all of them as well. Yeah, I've written down the prices of all of them. The stamp platform at the moment is between £27 and £30 in the UK. I think I paid £26.99 for this at a show. The Press to Impress is the cheapest of all of them, and that is between 18 and 21. These prices I just looked online a couple of days ago and looked at a few shops that came up first on a Google search just to give an idea. You might find it, you might find any of these slightly cheaper than that if you do a good search, but I just wanted to give you a rough idea of the difference in features and the difference in price of them all. So this one, 18 to 21, the stamp platform between 27 and 30. The Be Creative Stamper's Friend is around 25. This one's been for sale on Hochanda recently. And the Misti, which is the kind of original one, in the UK you're looking at between £45 and £50 for this, which obviously is a lot, especially now that these others have come on the market, and I'm going to show you a run through of all of them, but you'll see that if you're in the UK, I don't believe there's any real reason that you would pay this much. It's double the price of the others. And in my opinion, the others are just as good. So I think really, unless the Misti's priced more competitively in the UK, I can't see any reason why you wouldn't go for a cheaper option. I am also going to show you when we run through the mini Misti, because the Misti actually comes in 3 different sizes. This is the original, this is the mini, and there is I think it's called a memory Misti, which is a 12 by 12. I don't have that one. Let me also tell you a bit about myself in case you haven't come across my YouTube channel before now, because really this video is my opinion of these tools, and I'm coming at this from being a card maker. I mostly make cards, do a little bit of mixed media, but for a stamping tool I make a lot of cards. I design for various magazines, and I'm on various design teams. So for me, I need the stamping tool for stamping, for making sure my sentiments are straight. I'm on the design team for Spellbinders, so I do a lot of stamping onto die cuts. So that's what I would use the tool for. So bear that in mind, that this is my opinion. If you are looking for a stamping tool more for other uses, for scrapbooking or more mixed media stuff, then you might want to take my point of view with a pinch of salt, because your needs are going to be different. So just bear that in mind as I run through the different features. So let me switch my camera to overhead and then we can have a look at these in more detail. Okay, so let's look at the Misti first. As I said, I've had mine a couple of years now, and this is actually one of the original Mistis back from when she first started selling them. There was actually, I had to wait about 6 weeks. There was a waiting list because she was putting them, she was assembling them at home herself, and she, poor thing, just could not keep up with the demand. There was, it was so popular, it took off really quickly, probably quicker than she expected. So I had to wait to get this. And at that point, she was having the lids screen printed, which is why my grid is pink. Since then, she's come up with a better design, because screen printing will eventually wear off. So I'll show you on my mini Misti, which is, I've only had this about 6 months. The grid now is etched onto the lid, so that's not going anywhere. So if you were to buy a Misti now, it wouldn't have a pink grid, it would be the etched. The Misti, I believe the original Misti comes with 2 magnets. When I bought mine, the magnets were an optional extra. I had to pay separately for them, but I'm pretty sure that when you buy one now, it comes with 2 magnets. I'm not going to run through how this works particularly, because the purpose of this video really is just to show you the differences between the different tools that are available at the moment. But I'll just explain to you the basic features. The Misti comes with this foam insert. If you're using clear stamps, then you need to have the foam insert in. You put your stamp on the lid, put your bit of paper in, butt it up against the edge so that you can line it up straight. Hold it in place with your magnet, pop your stamp on the lid, press it down, and if you don't get a perfect impression, you can ink it up again, press it down again. If you're using a rubber or a cling mounted stamp, obviously that's got the cushion already on the stamp and it's thicker. So you would take out this insert. Then when you put your mounted stamp on the lid, press it down, your stamp is at the perfect height to give a good impression. On the Misti, this grid underneath has got a grid and it's wipe clean. So pop that back. Now the other thing about the Misti is, as it's American, your ruler on the edge is in inches. The grid lines are centimetres, but you've got inches around the edge. So, and on the bottom it's also got some of the foam, which helps just when, just to get a good impression. Obviously that isn't such an issue, because if you don't get a good impression, that's the whole point of the stamping tool, you can stamp it again. But I like the feel of the cushioning, I have to say, when I'm stamping. So that's the Misti. This is the original size, and then I've got the mini. Now the mini Misti, in my opinion, is kind of a luxury. If you're only going to get one stamping tool, then I don't think the mini Misti is good enough for everything. It is a very small size. Even though most of the cards I make are small, if you're stamping any sorts of borders, or where you might want to sort of unfold your card and move it around. Also, if you want to stamp a whole load of images at once, having more space is useful. So personally, I would say if you can afford to have the mini as well as another size, great, go for it. I actually keep mine on my desk because it's so small, and I grab it purely really for stamping sentiments. So I do have it as an addition to my original size. If I'm doing any sort of stamping on die cuts, things like that, I do tend to use the original. And you'll notice in my mini I've got a plastic grid. I'll explain about those at the end actually, because they will apply for all of these tools really, so I'll explain to you about that. So that's the mini Misti. I'm not quite sure, I think that also comes with 2 magnets. I can't quite remember from when I bought mine, but yeah, I think it does. So that's the Misti and the mini Misti. Next we'll have a look at the Holtz Tonic stamp platform. And this is probably the most different from the Misti. The other 2 tools we're going to look at are kind of the same idea as the Misti. This one does have quite a few different features. First of all, it's obviously a different size. It's more of a square format. The ruler on here has centimetres and inches, so you've got both. It goes up to 21 centimetres and 8.5 inches. And the design of this is a little bit different. First of all, there's no foam insert. You change the depth of how you're stamping by switching the lid around. If you're using clear stamps, then you have the lid so that you can read the word clear, and it just slots into the hinges like so. If you're using rubber or cling mounted stamps, then you just turn it around and use it this way. You can see it says rubber. The lid on this feels very sturdy. It's quite a heavyweight tool. It's got foam underneath, but to be quite honest, because the plastic frame of that is kind of the same depth, it gives a little bit of cushioning, but I would say you don't really feel it when you're stamping. Personally, I do like the foam insert. I think because I myself mostly use clear stamps, I would say probably 95% of my stamps are clear. I only have a very few rubber, probably just my background stamps and some of my spellbinders. So I personally prefer the Misti type foam insert for my stamping. I think this particular tool is great if you're more into mixed media, because you've got the white clean surface instead of the foam. You've also got 2 open edges, and you've got the square layout as well. So I think if you're using you know, larger sheets of watercolour card or something, or even journal pages, I think this is probably more suited to you because the open edges give you that ability. In terms of using this, I do like that it has a lid with kind of a handle. That's the one thing about the Misti that that isn't so great. The lid is flush with the ruler underneath, and if you're stamping, which, you know, this is designed to do, if you're mass producing cards and say you're stamping 50 of the same thing and you're rushing through them, it's actually a little bit fiddly to grab the lid. You've probably noticed on YouTube videos that a lot of crafters put a bit of washi tape on the edge so they've got kind of a handle to grab. So I think Tonic have kind of picked up on that as something that's missing from the Misti type tools, and they've added that in. So I do like that. Personally though, I've had this platform probably about 6 weeks now, and I don't use it. I've kept it out and put my Misti in the drawer to try and make myself give it a proper go, but I just don't like the clunkiness of it. It feels a bit cumbersome to me. As I say, most of what I do is fairly small size cards, like 4 1/4 by 5.5 or C6. And I like the way the Misti opens in a smaller format. This takes up too much desk space for me, and it feels like you should be using it this way round. That feels more natural. But then by the time I open it out, I'm reaching right across my desk to ink up my stamp. So for me, I'll be keeping this one just to use for my classes. For my personal use, it's not for me. That's not to say it's not a fantastic tool. And as I say, I think if you're into mixed media, you would probably prefer this than the others. So that's the stamp platform. Next we'll look at the Press to Impress. Now this has a couple of different features from the Misti, and I would say out of all of them this is probably my favourite, because this addresses the thing I don't like about the Misti with the handle, and it has another extra feature that it's got 2 open edges. They're not completely open. You've got this little bit in the corner which gives it stability. Now when I first saw this tool being demonstrated on video, the concern I had, I thought, oh, with all that gap with just one tiny piece in the bottom, I don't think it's going to be that sturdy. But it is. The lid is quite thick, and it certainly feels absolutely fine. So it's the same kind of design as the Misti in that it's got the foam insert, and if you can see on camera, it's got a grid etched into the bottom as well, so you can, if you want to, you can use that to line up your stamps. And then the foam insert pops back in. It comes with 2 magnets, and it's also got foam on the bottom. So this is as near perfect as it gets for me, because I love my Misti, but the handle thing was an issue for me. And although I didn't particularly find it a massive issue that it didn't have an open edge, oops, that's one thing to be careful of with the magnets. I do think it's a useful feature to be able to have your card sticking out. With the Misti, you can still have your cards hanging out the edge. It's a bit misleading actually about these open edges. You can have your card hanging over the edge and it will still stamp perfectly well, but you do lose a bit of stability with doing that, because you're not butted up completely against the edge. And obviously as you get closer, as you've got more card hanging off, it really is quite hard to keep it level. So it's not impossible to use a larger sheet of card in the Misti, but you lose a bit of the stability. So this design kind of addresses that. So that's the Press to Impress. The other amazing thing about this, not only is my favourite, but it's actually also the cheapest. This retails at, I've seen it between 18 and 21. So it's incredibly good value compared to the Misti, which, you know, at 45 to £60 in the UK, it's a massive difference. And it's actually, in my opinion, got a couple of improvements on the Misti. So that's the Press to Impress by Crafts2. And then the last tool we've got to look at is the Stamper's Friend by Be Creative. This, from all of them, is probably the closest in design to the Misti. You can see it's got the same 3 hinges. I didn't say the Press to Impress has just got 2 hinges. And both the Press to Impress and the Be Creative have got centimetres. The Press to Impress actually has inches as well, which is quite useful, whereas the Be Creative is just centimetres. Let me put these together so you can see a comparison. They're about the same size. One thing I think there's kind of pros and cons to both of these actually, because I think the numbering shows up better against the blue than the purple, but I like the larger font on the purple. But I guess because the Press to Impress has got inches on as well, and that's why the numbers are slightly smaller. So it's swings and roundabouts really on those, and it kind of depends how good your eyesight is. I'm probably only even thinking about the size of the fonts because I'm going blind in my old age. So Stampers Friends, this retails at about £25. This one comes with 4 magnets, whereas all the others are 2. To be perfectly honest, you probably don't need 4. 4's probably a bit excessive, but it's always useful to have magnets, so you know, it's great that they've included 4. It's pretty much the same design. You've got the foam insert and you've also got a grid. This one's got a clear grid and you can see the black foam underneath, whereas the Press to Impress, it was actually black plastic, so pretty much the same really. And again, the same as both the Misti and the Press to Impress, we've got foam underneath. The grid on this is the same, etched, so you won't have any issues with that rubbing off. And that's that. So pretty much they're all very similar, apart from the Tim Holtz, which is quite a different thing. In my personal opinion, if I were going to buy one of these, I would go for the Press to Impress, purely because of the handle and the open edges. So that's my favourite. If you're not a card maker and you're more into mixed media, then you might want to look at the Tim Holtz one. Let me just show you, this is one thing that I consider as quite an essential extra. Obviously the foam insert in your Misti, or whichever tool you buy, when you're stamping, if you're stamping something larger than your card, then you're going to end up with ink on your foam and it's going to get grubby. So you can cut a piece of the plastic template. You can just measure it out, cut a piece to fit inside. That protects your foam, but it also gives you a grid. So if you're lining up a small piece, or say you wanted to move this, you wanted to stamp something and then move it up 2 squares, stamp again, move it up 2 more squares. So it's ideal for that. The other thing is the offcuts I've kept. You can lay these on top, and then if you're stamping a sentiment and you want to make sure it's straight, you can lay it out on here. Pick up your stamp with the lid, take your plastic out the way and stamp your sentiment. So really, really useful. I've cut one of these, fits inside my mini Misti, and I've bought this new pack so that I can cut out for my new tools. Obviously this one's going to be a bit tricky, but of course I can use this foam insert as my template, and I can just line it up on the grid, and then I can cut around it. I can use a Sharpie or something to draw around it, and then so I can cut a piece to protect this piece of foam from getting grubby. I hope you found this comparison useful and it helps you in deciding which tool is right for you. I'll put details of all the product names, etc. in the description box on YouTube, so have a look there if you want more details. Thanks for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please hit subscribe. Thanks for watching, see you soon. Bye.